All right, I think he's already. Is he here? How's the music, by the way? Is it too loud? Okay, I got a lot of messages. Oh, yeah, he's here, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey,
Hey, Jason, how are you
I'm
doing?
good.
Wait, let
Very
me
good.
lower the music because I put a little bit of background music to get me ready because I'm quite nervous. Whew.
Ah, no worries, no worries.
First of all, bonjour, mon ami. I fellow Concordian from Montreal. How are you doing?
Oh, really? So you
Yes,
graduated from
sir.
Korea? No
Yes,
way.
yes, yes. I was there from 2010 to 2015. So when
Oh
I
my,
found out that we had such a celebrity from our school, I was like, oh man, I got I gotta link up with him real quick. But
my goodness.
are you still in
Awesome.
Montreal?
Yeah. In
Nice,
Montreal, I live on the West End, West Island. So
nice,
West End of
nice.
the, so
I was in Côte des Neiges, which slightly less nice than West Island, but hey, very close to Concordia, so you
yeah.
know,
Well, you definitely had an easier commute.
that's for sure. That's for sure. Are you a native, Montreal native, born and raised?
Yeah. Born and raised.
Very, very cool. So tell me, how did you get into the whole game industry? Did you start off there?
Dude, it's a long story, and we only have 1 hour, so
Okay.
uh, yeah, yeah. The short version is that when I was graduating from school and stuff, that there were no game schools. There was barely a book about game development.
Yeah.
This is sort of mid '90s, right? So
Oh wow.
the,
Yeah.
the internet barely existed as we know it, and so I always wanted to get into games, but it was just it felt like things that robots made in Tokyo. Like it wasn't involved.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got into more multimedia animation, that web, like web design and whatever that was just starting to come up. And then
Hmm.
that led me to a company called Silicon Graphics, which did
Okay.
a bunch of the kind of not mainframe computers, but the super high end computers that were used in the initial Hollywood movies like Tron and The Abyss,
I
stuff like that.
remember
Like,
Abyss.
like
That one spooked me.
remember in Abyss with the like water,
Yeah.
like this was like mind blowing at the
I
time, computer
remember. I
graphics.
remember.
and
Oh
then
man.
and then that led me to actually a Montreal based company called Matrox, which in the 90s made an amazing 3D graphics card. So like today there's Nvidia, and pretty much Nvidia, and to a lesser extent AMD
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
dominate the market, and Intel I guess a little bit, but in the mid 90s it was like an explosion of competitors,
Yeah.
and like 20
Before they all
30 different.
consolidated into
Yeah,
two or three big
exactly. So,
ones.
so the time Matrox had one of the best chips on the planet, and so I
And it
was
was
working with
Canadian?
them. Yeah, based in Montreal, on the 40 on the highway.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so I worked with them, and my job was to work with game developers as
Okay.
they were learning how to use 3D hardware. So back in the 90s, like 3D accelerated hard like didn't exist.
Yeah.
So if there was, well, most games were 2D, right? It was just
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
sprite,
yeah.
parallax and stuff like that. And then as people started to explore 3D, you would program a rasterizer in software. Like you would do all the computations
Yeah, yeah.
of geometry, all would be in software. Like the original Quake engine and all that stuff. Like that was just
It's
all Carmack.
revolutionary, yeah.
And so we had to use our engineers to work with the game engineers to like actually make it talk to the chip. So I remember probably 97, 98 or whatever, we went to the UK to work with Core Design, which did the Tomb Raider. They were working on Lara
I
Croft.
remember that one.
Originally, Tomb Raider was
Yeah.
a MS DOS. It wasn't even on Windows. An MS DOS game, and so we went in, and there were some really smart people on my team that work with them to program and have the game like talk directly to the chip
Yeah.
in assembly. So I mean, some pretty hardcore stuff. And then then I went to a networking middleware company that's doing like multiplayer tech, and then I ended up running the IGDA for 9 years, so the International Game Developers Association.
So yeah, I want to get into that in just a second, but great. This is actually a really good transition because like we can now see how much the whole game development process has been streamlined for our
Oh,
generation to be able to. I mean,
crazy.
with Godot, with Unity, just download an asset pack and just tick 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 speak, and you're making games that look like the
None of that
fantasies.
exists.
Yeah,
If you were making a game, you were literally building it like bit by bit,
exactly,
from scratch. There was no, engines. There was no, none of these assets. Like literally, you were building everything, and so the barrier to entry was quite high
for sure.
in terms of skill, and it was so much more programmer oriented.
Yep.
In,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
those early, and
Well,
and then there was probably a decade. There was a decade where the engine started to be a thing, like when Unreal
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember it was.
Unity. And there was renderware, and a bunch of other ones.
I
And
remember when I don't know if you probably do recall when Unreal 3, I think it was 3 if I'm not mistaken, released their Good Samaritan trailer, and I
mm,
couldn't believe, like, my mind at the time. I remember I was 17 and I called all my friends and I was like, how is this possible? This was like so far ahead in my head. I could, and now I see guys on Facebook groups who are just, it feels like they're taking it for granted. Like, I'm like, you guys, the graphics you guys have
yeah,
are out of
yeah,
this out
yeah,
of this
it
world.
is crazy. But
Yeah,
probably for a decade or so, like if you went to any of the industry conferences, one of the most popular discussions would be, do you buy an engine or do you
yeah,
build your engine?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
companies were like debating, okay, should we program our own or should we
yeah.
go
Hmm.
get Unreal or renderware
Square
and
Enix was for the longest time. I remember even they were even very late into like adopting Unreal. I think their first one was Final Fantasy 16.
well, listen,
Yeah,
there are still companies like, if I'm not mistaken, I think Cyberpunk and CD Projekt, they
yeah,
have their own engine.
yeah, yeah. I think so
There's
too.
a few others that are still building their own base of technology.
By the way, you got a few salutations from Calgary, from Red Iron Labs, somebody who's worked with you and who
Oh,
knows you personally, actually. Yeah, his name's
wow.
Lloyd, and he said hello.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez. Is
and
Lloyd one of your normal fans, normal watchers?
well, we're part of some of the same Discord groups. So
Oh,
and I just happened to mention that we were gonna live stream with you, and he knew you, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
so it was really really cool. And
Awesome. Yeah.
actually,
Well, I was just emailing Lloyd earlier this week. I'm actually heading to Calgary. I'm going to be running a workshop or a boot camp on funding, pitching, business
yeah,
marketing stuff.
that's what we
And
need.
then yeah, and so
And
hopefully I'll see Lloyd in a couple of weeks.
exactly. Well, Lloyd, you have your hello,
Ah,
and also a fan of ours, Tasty Chutney, also says he used to work with 640K RAM and an extender. Not exactly sure what that means, but I think you do. So I'll let
yeah,
you. Yeah.
well, there was like, these were memory extenders because there was so little RAM, so little memory on the machines. Like as a gamer, one of the things you had to be really good at was to optimize what's called the auto exec batch file. So when
Okay.
a computer boots up in MS DOS,
Yeah.
there's an auto exec file that it looks to kind of like, what like memory managers and other things do I have to load. And so you would go in and really fiddle with those
Just
settings.
to really maximize it. That's insane. And I just turned on my computer and I'm like, why won't it
Ah,
work? But that's awesome. Well, actually, I think now's a good time to transition into some of the more indie game questions, especially some of the marketing stuff that because it seems from what I've seen in our community, it's predominantly indie game developers, so it's everyone is kind of on their own, a little bit fragmented, but some of the same issues are very recurring. And the biggest one I've personally seen is marketing, because it
okay.
becomes usually it's a finances issue, and it's also unpleasant having to go and post about stuff all the time. So I just wanted to ask you, from your personal experience with all the studios that you've seen, what are some of the bigger, most easy, well, little things to tweak that could really maximize their
Mm,
exposure, to other
yeah.
players, potential players, stuff like this.
Well, listen, Yanis, this is a big topic,
Yeah.
and you have to like, abstract out a little bit. I think the biggest issue, particularly with indie developers, developers just getting started, is they have to understand like why are they doing this? Like what's your motivation? Like
Mm-hmm.
what does success even mean to you as an individual? And there's no right or wrong answer, but you need to be kind of honest with yourself
Yeah.
Are you doing this for fun? You've got a day job, in whatever,
Yes.
and you're just coding, building stuff, goofing around, whatever. And and if you're just doing it for fun and for learning,
Mm-hmm.
okay, then there's no pressure. You don't need to worry about marketing and making money and all this kind of stuff. Nothing wrong with doing it for. If you're doing it because games are your canvas that you express yourself, and some people write poems, some people make
Yep. Yep.
music,
Yep.
some people express themselves via interactivity or what, and it's like you have things that you just need to kind of get those pixels onto the canvas. Then it's a form of self-expression and kind of getting your ideas out. Again, if you're doing it for those reasons, don't worry about audience and money and marketing and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you're saying, you know what, all that's nice, but I actually want to make a living. I want to be a professional.
Yep.
I want to be able to do this as a career. That's fine. But then you have to decide, well, do I want to be an entrepreneur
Mm-hmm.
and do the marketing and think about the audience and worry about funding and hiring team and sort of building things that are commercially viable and doing market analysis and all that kind of stuff, like actually like embrace the mindset of being an entrepreneur.
Treating it as a business as opposed to treating it
Yeah,
as game
exactly.
development.
Or is it like that scares the hell out of me and I have zero interest? I just like to code or I just like to animate.
Mm-hmm.
Well then don't be indie.
Yeah.
Go get a job. Go get a job.
So the advice is get a job.
Like not everyone needs to be indie. Not everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone
Mm-hmm.
has the mindset or the just like if all you want to do is sit there and code,
Yeah.
go get a job and let someone pay you to code. It's like a simple as that.
Oh, that's encouraging to our guys, but I like it. I think it's honest. I think it's an honest truth.
Well, but I mean, like sometimes I'll meet developers, and they'll be like, "Oh, my dream is to be indie, and I want to do
Yeah.
this." And I have all these, I'm working on, I'm coding stuff, and I get so nerdy about all these cool, interesting things, and I don't want to do anything about marketing. I don't care about social media. I don't want to touch it. Who has time? I just want to code all day.
Yeah.
Well, then, go get a job. Let
Yeah, go
someone
get
pay
a
you.
job. Fair enough. Yeah, to me, with my personal experience, I noticed that the biggest thing was I had to learn to emotionally detach myself from the project and realize I need to treat it as a business. I really need to focus on, okay, I know this is a really cool feature that I would love, or these are like, I had a story that I had written for my board game. And then I was like, no, nobody's gonna pay attention. It's gonna detract from the actual user experience. I scratched my beautiful, mind you, very beautiful, well written story, and I put in the most basic: a cat is getting kidnapped and you have to go save him. And it's
There you
functional.
go.
It's functional enough to work, and I think that's the biggest issue I've seen with is scope creep in regards to you want it to be a business, treat it like a business, and detach
Yeah.
yourself a little bit. Be honest with yourself.
And listen,
Um,
Yana, that's good advice, but
mhm.
you you have to make that decision, right? Like, do I just want to sit there and code all day? Okay, go get a job.
Yeah.
Do I actually have ambitions that this is going to be my career and I'm going to build a business and like put food on the table? Then like you said, then I have to treat it as a business and kind of embrace an entrepreneurial
Mhm.
mindset. If it's just a hobby and I'm having fun, okay, do it on the weekends
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and there's no stress. Just do whatever you want, no
Just have fun.
problem. Keep your day. So I think oftentimes people just have not had that conversation with themselves,
Hmm.
or they're lying to themselves, meaning they'll say, "Oh, I'm just doing this for fun. I'm
And then
just
the
it's
numbers
cool."
don't come in. Yeah,
And
I've
then
seen that.
but really they wish they made $1 million and they can quit their day
Yeah.
job, and they're sort of lying to themselves that it's only for fun on the
Yeah.
week.
For
And so
fun,
and
for
then
money. For fun
yeah,
with a
I
little
think
asterisk and then the translation at the bottom.
but I kind of hoped I'd make money, and then they're all
Uh,
butthurt that they
of
don't make
course.
money
Of
because they
course.
didn't do any marketing, they didn't think about all that. So I think before I get into like all the little ideas about like how to make it more commercially viable, all that kind of stuff, I do think there's still a lot of people that need to have that kind of
Conversation
conversation
with themselves.
on
Yeah.
themselves and so on and so
Okay.
on. So kind of with that out of the way, Now let's assume some people watching are still, okay, I'm ready to embrace entrepreneurship.
Okay.
I'm ready to think about this as a business. I actually want to take a shot at being professional and all that kind of stuff. So I think now most of the conversation is along those lines. And I will say again, there's no
Hmm.
right or wrong. Like all of the options we discussed are all fine.
Yeah, of course,
You just
of course.
know which is the one you actually want.
But by the way, I
Uh,
apologize if you see me looking down. It's because I'm reading
yeah.
questions and the chat. People are all really appreciative. They're just saying hi, a lot of hellos, and that the honesty is definitely appreciated. I wanted to ask you something because to everybody who's just tuning in, you've helped games that have turned out to be fairly successful. You said, if I'm not mistaken, the games have generated over $300 million in revenue. Uh,
All this that's just through the hub. That's just through gameplay space. I
that's
mean,
just through
there's
the, that's okay. My second question is, can I have some of that? But that we'll talk about that off stream. No, I'm kidding. But from your personal experience, since you've seen so many studios, you've seen so many developers, you've seen so many people come to you with ideas, just from the basic idea man to actual like serious businessmen. In your eyes, what has been a sort of guaranteed? Wait, I wrote it down well actually. Metric that usually guarantees success in your eyes. You're like, this guy, this game is gonna succeed. This guy is full of baloney.
yeah. Well, listen. If I had such a metric, and it was consistent,
Yeah.
I'd be really rich. But so there's a whole bunch. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Um, I always recommend to think about audience first, and this is a major mistake that so many game developers make. Even AAA devs,
Hmm.
the most experienced devs make this. Not just
Concord being a
yeah.
very good example
Oh,
of
yeah.
that.
So I always like to start from audience first, meaning who's going to play this game? Who is this for? Who should
Hmm.
my fans be? Where do they hang out? How do I go talk to them? And I mean, I like to use the example of sci-fi, right? Like
Yeah.
I like outer space. I like Star Wars and
Same.
Star Trek. Looking at all the NASA Hubble telescope. Like I'm just a nerd for sci-fi. So if I was starting a new studio, I would say, let's build a studio that's going to go after sci-fi nerds, geeks, because I'm one of
Interesting.
them. I can
Interesting.
talk their language, and that means that the games I'm going to work on, I'm going to be very passionate about because I'm also a sci-fi nerd,
Hmm.
and I know where they hang out. I know which YouTubers they follow. I know which Twitch channels they
It'll
follow.
be more
I know
intuitive for you. Yeah.
like 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 I know where to go to find them and to talk to
To find
them.
your
I know
people.
what subreddits they're on.
Yeah.
And so my studio is really a studio about getting space nerds to fall in love with the studio. And
Mm.
the best way I can do that is to make some awesome space games to deliver to my space nerd fans or my would-be space nerd fans.
I see.
And almost no developer thinks that way, right? Most of us are like, oh, I have an idea for a cool grappling hook mechanic that I can build in Unreal, and they start building and then like build a game and then build a story, and then they just like barf it out. And it might be cool, it might be fun, it might be beautiful. The grappling hook may be super sweet, but like, who wants it? Who's it for? Like
Yeah.
who you talk to about it? Who's going to care? So I normally kind of flip it and force people to think about audience
Work from the
first.
audience, and then
Yeah.
what would they enjoy? Yeah, that's
And
true.
and and even for the entire studio, not just the one project. Because one of the other things that points to success is that the more coherent your portfolio of games are, like let's say all of your games are spacey games,
Yeah.
right? A moon base builder, a sci-fi shooter, a Mars colony game. What happens is each game captures more space nerd fans.
Hmm.
Then when you make game two, all of your Space Nerd fans that are in your Discord, on your newsletter, on your socials from game one
They're
are
potential
all wanting
clients.
game two. And then when you make game three, it's enough. Now it's the sci-fi, whatever space call it. So you're like rolling over your audience from game to game, and you're raising the floor of
Yeah.
a kind of baseline of success.
I know that objectively you're right, but part of me, maybe it's the little artistic side of me, feels like
Oh,
that's a I know it's I feel it feels wrong because it feels like I'm just pandering to an audience and then I'm working my way back. But you're right, you already have the audience. You know they know it's but not that you know what they like, they know what they like. And at the end
yeah.
of the day all you're doing is supplying them with more of what they like as opposed to but then there's
No,
guys like Kojima who break that mold, right? They come out and they hit us with one game is a Cold War science or Cold War spy game. The next game is
yeah.
the rain is aging people, you know. So
Yeah. But some people earn the right to do that
yeah,
because they had a breakout success, right? So Kojima with Metal Gear,
hmm
Metal Gear, one of the best games of all time, on people's top
pioneer,
10, top
yeah,
five, like whatever. Okay, you go do a Metal Gear Solid and sell 100 million copies,
yeah.
and then your next game can be some arty farty, thing, and they're gonna be like, oh my god, we don't know what the hell Yanis is doing, but it's Yanis, we'll buy it.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
problem is you can't start that way. You can't start and say I'm gonna, blah. So yeah, whatever. Kojima could do whatever he wants.
that's true.
Name,
That's what
name some
happened
other.
with Yu Suzuki, the creator of Shenmue, actually, who originally his first two games were, or his previous games, if I'm not mistaken, were such successes that they gave him full reign on Shenmue 2, which was a complete failure. And then they tried to make an MMO out of it, which,
Yeah,
yeah, the whole MMO craze,
it
I don't know
doesn't
if you remember.
doesn't always work. But so whenever a developer comes to me and they're talking about audience and they're
Yeah.
talking about who their fans are and who they're trying to like they're sort of this customer first mindset.
Hmm.
That doesn't guarantee success, but that gets my attention. That
Yeah.
that to me is sort of a whole different conversation than the person coming in saying, "I woke up one day and I had an idea for a grappling hook, and now I've built a whole thing around it."
Did you get a lot of
Yeah,
grappling hook offers, or
I,
because no? But
whatever.
objectively, I know what you're saying. It shows that they've done the market research. They know the direction they're trying to go, and it inherently, it's like somebody who's a chef versus somebody who's a restaurant owner. You
Yeah.
know, you can tell the difference, right? It's
So that's very sort of a little more abstract, a little more philosophical. Something that's a bit more concrete that maybe the viewers can kind of take away is the degree of replayability of your game and your design. So what's been happening, let's say in the past 6, 7, 8 years, like really after the rise of Twitch,
yeah,
and sort of the dominance of influencers and content creators in the sort of buying decision for gamers or playing decisions, is that games that are more linear and fixed content. So imagine a three
God
four
of War.
hour story game,
Yeah,
start to finish. You play it, it's fun, but there's no real choices to make, and it all ends the same. It's linear, one ending.
yep,
Those games are really suffering. Unless it's God of War, just because it has 20 years of epicness and whatever. But if today you launch your 4 hour linear narrative fixed ending game,
yep,
you're going to really struggle. It's a super hard category to see. Or 3D adventure games, start to finish, 6, 7 hours. Short linear fixed ending, fixed content,
non-replayable. Yeah, because then
and
it's
non.
already yeah.
So these
Yeah,
are what you might call consumable games. Like once I've consumed it, because if I read the book or I watch a movie, I've watched it, I've read it, I've played it, it's
yeah.
done, I put it down. Those
Mhm.
games are struggling, and they're struggling at the indie level as well as the AAA level.
Well,
Whereas games that are more systemic,
hmm,
or what you might call unique situation generators, meaning every time you play, it's a different situation,
okay,
right? So chess is the ultimate, unique situation generator, or basketball, like football, whatever. Every time you play basketball, it's the same rules, but every single time you play basketball, it's a
chess.
different outcome.
Chess is the biggest example of this in history.
Yeah, and the story is the back and forth and the ups and downs and the drama inside the game and who fouled who and all this kind of stuff. But chess itself is infinite.
Hmm.
And so games that are more systemic, more rule-based, more in that vein of like kind of, not doesn't have to be infinitely replayable, but highly replayable,
Yeah,
those tend to do much better.
for
And so
sure.
what you have to do as a developer is think about the Twitch effect. Meaning, if someone watches my game being played, do they watch and then say that was cool, and then are not motivated to buy it or to
Yeah.
play it themselves?
Yeah, yeah.
They just watched you play the whole thing
It's
start
like
to
watching a
finish.
movie. It's like watching a movie on Twitch, and then at the end of the day, you're not going to go to the theater because you already know how it ends.
Yeah, exactly,
Exactly.
exactly. Whereas if I'm watching you play Hearthstone or Balatro or Fortnite or Rocket League or whatever, it's like
Slay the Spire is the biggest example
all
of this.
or chess. Like now I'm learning strategies. I'm motivated. I think you made bad choices. I'm going to make better choices. And so now the impact of watching it on Twitch motivates me to go buy it and play it and get deep into it.
Exactly.
So this is the other kind of thing that I'm looking at when developers come in with ideas. If it's like, oh, I want to tell this story and it's about 4 hours and this is a big event, I'm like, no, you're screwed. Like step away from the keyboard. It's not going to work.
Especially as a first time or as an
yeah.
indie game, I think it's particularly hard. Sorry, there's been a lot of really interesting comments. A lot of people have been agreeing with you. One of my friends, actually, his name's Rory. He made a game called Who is Abby? Phenomenally beautiful. Honestly, I was extremely surprised that this came out of a small indie studio, and he's got great reviews, but he says he's really struggling to get it into the hands of streamers because they know it's just difficult to keep it going, content wise. So
yeah, I'm looking at it on Steam. I mean, it looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
But on first glance, it also looks like a walking simulator.
Yeah.
Right. Which is exploration immersive, which if your friend Rory did some market research before he started, as he was getting started, and I mean maybe they did, they would have seen that in today's market, walking simulators don't sell. That the walking simulators that sold all about 10 years ago, like Gone Home, Dear Esther, etc.
Yeah.
And they had a little spike, and then they all dropped off, and no other walking simulators made money.
So now his new game, it falls a lot more into what you're talking about, open-ended. It's practically like a Gmod type environment where you're just playing around, having fun, destroying things. And I think it's going to be, I've seen it in action and it looks quite cool. We also had, somebody said, this is a slightly long comment, so bear with me a second. We are having trouble gaining wish lists on Steam, or rather visibility in general. We wrote emails to all the big websites, portals, etc. Only 2 ever came back to us. The rest seems to only be willing to post whatever promises clicks. I have the feeling that nowadays there is no other option but paying influencers to market your game. Even promoting on Reddit requires you to have an account that is several months old, blah, blah, blah. Any suggestions for marketing for Mr. Brainfart82?
Awesome. Hopefully his studio is not called Mr. Brainfart Studio. Maybe that'll get attention of the sites. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the sort of the $1 million question.
Mm-hmm.
Counterintuitively, I would say don't worry about wish lists. There's actually too much emphasis placed on wish lists.
Mm-hmm.
That wish lists, they can be gamed. You can pay ads. Like it's not the thing you should focus on. So I really like focusing rather on building your player base and running private playtests and starting small. Right, so you have a build of the game, a demo, whatever.
This is really important, guys. Pay attention to this. I think this is a little golden nugget that I just hit us with.
So you would invite, let's say, your friends and family first, a dozen people, and they're going to play, and they're going to say, "Oh, it's so beautiful," even though they're friends and family, so they're going to kind of pump it up a bit. But they're going to say, like, "I don't understand the map. Like, where was I?" And when I pointed here, this thing didn't work. Like, they're gonna tell you a whole bunch of like really low hanging fruit on how to make the build better, and like for someone who's not in it all the time to understand what's even going on. So use those friends and family to kind of improve the build. Then you go on, I don't know, wherever it's Blue Sky, Twitter, Reddit, TikTok. I mean, name your platform. And what you do is you say, we're doing a play test, and you have, let's say, a little animated GIF or a little teaser, like a little gameplay teaser of actual gameplay, or a screenshot, a really cool screenshot. They say, hey, here's our latest, blah, blah, blah game. We're running an internal play test, come sign up. And maybe you get a dozen people, maybe you get 50, maybe you get 100, like who knows? And you use the fact that you're running a private play test as the excuse to make some noise. rather than
Mm.
saying, look at me, come wish list, and like begging for a wish list and begging anyone just to look at you. It's like, get in line. Everybody wants a wish list. Everybody. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're like, come, hey, we want you to give us some input, like come play. It's ready for you to play. And if you had already been thinking about audience and who my fans should be, I don't know, it's space nerds.
Yeah.
Okay, well now what subreddits do I go make a post in where all the space nerds are hanging
Yeah.
out?
Yep, yep,
It
yep.
might not be a game subreddit, maybe it's a Star Wars or it's a NASA Hubble telescope subreddit. Like you have to think about where they are, and you sort of show up there and say, hey, other NASA fans,
Yep.
like we're playing a Mars colony game. We've got a private beta ready to test that. We'd love your input,
Yeah. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
kind of, and then you slowly build up from there. And then once they've joined the Discord and they're in the game, then you can say, oh, hey everyone, if you haven't dropped us a wish list, like, yeah, that help us out. Like, why don't you go drop us? But they're in the community already. They're
Exactly.
already in the
And
game.
that's more valuable than anything because you're more or less guaranteeing sales. And
Yeah.
I think this is really valid feedback because I caught myself very early on, especially with Reddit. It's what I call false positive feedback. You post something on Reddit and everybody's like, "Good job," and then they all forget about it. It's the same. I feel like wish lists are a very similar thing. It's like, okay, I'll like because it costs them nothing, and it's essentially just all they do is they get email feedbacks. So you get this false sense of security, and then when it actually launches, tough
Yeah.
luck, you know.
And so people will often talk about sort of the like wish list becoming stale.
Yeah.
And what the research shows is they don't get stale over time. It's more about degree of engagement. So let's say I was running play tests in the manner I described,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been building my community, and I've been doing it for 2 years. The folks that wishlisted me at the beginning of the 2 years convert pretty much at the same rate as the ones that just came on later in the stage. So
Ah.
it's not, the staleness isn't about time, it's engagement. Now, if instead what I was doing I don't know, I was paying for ads, running a bunch of TikToks, spending money on influencers to like replay my trailer.
Yeah.
And so everyone kind of came in just because they saw something cool
And they
and
love
said, oh,
being
that's
part of the
cool.
community. Yeah.
So, and I wish list. Those are the ones that tend to not convert as highly because then they don't really remember. And it's like, oh, well, that was that thing that so-and-so said it was cool. And I was watching the stream. And so I wish listed, but nah.
Yeah.
So it's the degree of engagement that determines how likely a wish list will convert.
Okay.
And so when students are like, how do I juice my wish list? Where do I buy some ads and who do I pay to like talk? Like to me, that's you're almost sort of throwing money away because those wish lists will be much less valuable than the ones that you invited into the community to play the early builds.
That's true.
And so on.
Actually,
Yeah.
this is a really good transition to what about when producers or investors are gonna ask about your game? Are they not gonna look at things like wish lists? Are they not gonna be a little bit disappointed if they see, for example, a lower number? But you can tell them, hey, I have a very engaged, active community of 100, 200 people on my Discord who are regularly talking about the game.
Yeah. Well. So what I'm suggesting is that if you first emphasize on the audience and on building community and running play tests, the wish list will follow.
I see. Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
And yeah, because if you have a super vibrant community, it's very unlikely that they themselves are not going to go also wish list the game and whatnot. So whereas if all you do is juice your wish list, that doesn't mean you're going to build a community and get player feedback and so on. So that being said, one of the other metrics that is super important is the median playtime of your build.
Interesting.
So yeah, so if you have whether it's a private playtest or a public demo you're putting on Steam, the magic number seems to be about an hour. If the median playtime is about an hour, that means some people are playing a few minutes, that some people are playing a bunch of hours. Yep. Like that's a good indicator that your gameplay is sticky. They have a good gameplay loop. You have some engaging, like the game's solid. If your median playtime is like 10 minutes, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't care how many wish lists you have. If your median playtime of your build is 10 minutes, you're kind of screwed.
Okay.
Because what's happening then is people are downloading it, they're logging in, like, oh, this sucks, and they're bouncing. Or they're downloading it and they start running around, they get stuck, they don't know where to go because the mission system is not clear, and so like, screw this, and they're out.
Yeah.
So
That's an
that
interesting
is,
analytic to measure.
yeah.
So guys, write this one down. Median playtime is something that's very important for you to track because essentially it's a good feedback as to the actual quality of your game, correct?
Yeah, the stickiness.
The stickiness, yeah.
Now, this relates also to the comments about consumable games versus systemic games.
How many people actually beat the game versus not beating it?
Well, but also, if I'm running internal playtests and the game I'm building is a 2-hour poetic story,
yeah,
I mean, like, how many times can people
that's true.
It just doesn't lend itself to that kind of private playtesting. We made a bunch of updates. We rebalanced stuff. We added new systems. Try again, play again, go again. So this model of using the playtesting as the excuse to build audience, to build community, doesn't work if what you're building is like a 2-hour walking simulator.
Well, actually, I have a small question, and I apologize to the viewers because I think this might be particularly related to my own experiences, but I think it will be useful for everyone else as well. For example, I've been of the opinion, and you can correct me if I'm completely off, and maybe it's gonna tank my game, but I don't really believe that indie game developers should pursue the traditional marketing channels whatsoever, nor, and now you might greatly disagree with me on this one, seek funding if they can avoid it. I believe that we have a lot more flexibility being an indie game developer in terms of what we can and cannot do, which also comes at the cost of not having the same budget of everything else. But like you said, for a guy like me, my game's not necessarily the most aesthetic visually. It's a board game, so obviously we put a lot of money into the art and it looks nice, but it's only going to look so nice as a board and card game. And I'm of the opinion that it's okay if we don't do as much pre-launch marketing as a AAA game like Cyberpunk, but because I could be completely off, but I think we have a much longer possibility of respiking when you see games like Among Us, who down the road, our launches as indie game developers doesn't tend to be as linear and as stratospheric as bigger studios. So take some time and be able, if you can afford to, do some minor A/B testing and see what gives you positive. Like for me, I've noticed little tournaments, little games, game nights, even in-person game nights have been really fun and have gotten me pre-orders. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you really think that smaller indie game devs should be seeking funding?
Well, again, it comes back to the initial question of why are you doing this?
Okay.
Right? If it's I'm just having fun on the weekends, and if I make money, well, then I got some beer money that weekend. Like then sure, like don't take. But also, it's extremely unlikely that anyone would give you funding. So it's not even a choice you have to make. Because if you're like, I'm just doing this for fun, you're around, make some beer money, and that's fine. That's fine. But also, you're never going to end up in this dilemma where it's like, oh my god, do I take the money? Or no one's giving you money. Like, don't worry about it.
But do you think? Well, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do you think that we have different avenues of great success as indie game developers that don't necessarily require the same funding, but require other investments, such as time, for example, or
time is the biggest one, and what funding allows you to do is hire teammates, right?
Yeah.
That maybe you're a good coder, but you're not great at art, and so you're doing asset store stuff, and that's okay. But if I only had a bit of money to pay an artist, this is also why when you start a studio, you're best not to start it alone. That ideally on the starting team, the founders, the partners, There's a technical person, a creative, artistic person, and
Yeah,
then ideally a marketing, business person. And then that sort of allows the three of you to kind of weather the burden or take on the
that's
burden
true.
of building the initial stuff without necessarily paying each other. So there's definitely trade-offs there. If you have larger ambitions and you want to, and the project you're doing, you need 10 people and more meaningful budget, but you've done your homework, you know who your audience is, you've done your analysis, and you believe what you're working on has the potential to make some decent money, then it's okay to ask for funding. I mean, there's no
Yeah,
problem getting funding, but the funding you can get is always relative to the market potential of the game.
I see.
It's
Then,
not like, unless it's your mom giving you the money, it's never based on need,
yeah.
right? You're not getting money because you need it. You're getting money because someone believes what you're working on has potential to make more money than they're giving you.
Time out. Let's repeat that one more time for the chat because that's actually really, I really like the way you phrased that. You said the funding is never based on need. It's based on basically the potential um, that
Yeah.
basically that they can get back out of you. It's they're
Yeah.
not. It's there's no free checks in the games
Well,
industry
unless it's your uncle, unless
unless
it's your
it's your
mom,
uncle, unless it's your mom, guys. But
someone
and
who loves you and won the lottery and they're going to give you some money, go have fun. Okay, fine.
okay. So
So it's
guys, if your
never.
moms want to give me money, please. Like, I'm just kidding. I actually got a really good question from Affectionate Fold 320. Question: how much growth can you rely on to spread sales by word of mouth, festivals, conventions? Should an indie game developer invest in some of these, which are quite expensive? How much can you realistically get from having $0 in your marketing for a game?
Yeah, I mean, the online showcases definitely have an impact. The in-person ones, like going to PAX, for example,
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of fun. They're way more expensive. Just travel cost. Now, listen, if you live in Boston or you live in Seattle and
Mm-hmm.
it's down the street, okay, then all of a sudden the math there is much more in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have to travel to the other side of the world to attend a showcase, like a physical one, it's they're fun, and you never know who you're going to bump into, right? Some notable streamers just be walking down the hall and say, "Ooh, that's cool. What's that?" And now you're
Yeah,
friends with Spider Cat or something. I don't
that's
know.
gambling basically.
Yeah. So I mean, like that could happen and does happen, but you can't, bet on it or guarantee it. But the online showcases are definitely well worth it. Some of them are free, right? And it's more whether or not, if it's the strategy festival, okay, well, you're a strategy game, you submit, they think you're cool, they let you in, and that's going to get you a lot of visibility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do every winter here in Montreal, we do a big, we call it demo nights, where we take some unreleased games and we broadcast it on Twitch, and the developers come and like talk us through some gameplay and a bit about the game and so on. And some of those games on that night, like over the show, will get upwards of 20,000 more wish lists,
Holy
10 to
shit.
20,000. Yeah.
Holy shit. Wait, I just want to interrupt 1 second because somebody said something in the chat that I think needs to be corrected. They said no funding means no potential. And I think that is false. No, it's not that no funding means no potential. It's about allocation of time and resources. Without funding, like you said, you're not going to be able to get a marketing expert on your team, but you can sit down and do the marketing yourself. I personally was able to, with my own game, I know it's not much, but get 500 pre-orders on the App Store just by doing minimal work, um, just sending messages to people and stuff like this. It's just a question of chipping away at it over time, and the compounding effect has. One thing I used to do was I used to hijack ads from other video games on Instagram with my game account, and I'd be like, guys, we all know these games suck. Listen, we're a small indie studio. We can't afford big ads. Come to our channel. And in the span of a few days, I think I got like over, not much, but quite a few downloads of people. And I think I got 300 beta signups in over a weekend just by, because the ads are going out and the comments are there.
Yeah.
That's guerrilla marketing at
Yeah,
its finest.
listen, funding is fuel, but if you have the time
Mm-hmm.
and energy and expertise, there's no reason why you can't make a game, for an
Exactly.
audience that has huge potential.
Mm.
Um,
Just slowly, slow and steady. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. We also got
Yeah.
some really other interesting questions. What are some general marketing tips to know when marketing game as an indie developer? Should I spend money on trailers versus social media or YouTube? What are the things that you've seen have had the best return, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, the best return is making a good game, right? It's like the best marketing you'll do is having a quality game. Obviously, that's a very subjective, unmeasurable comment. But first, so backing up a second,
Mm-hmm.
marketing is more than just ads, right? More than just promo.
Mm-hmm.
And if you open up a marketing textbook, it talks about the classic four P's of marketing. The first P is promotion, so that's buying ads, getting a booth at PAX, having a trailer, whatever, promotion.
Mm-hmm.
The next P is price, so thinking about your business model. Do I make it $5, $10, 15? Do I do free DLC, paid DLC? Do I do, all the question around pricing is part of the marketing equation. Then place is the
Mm-hmm.
third, and place in the traditional sense is like, okay, I'm opening a pizza shop. Do I do it in this neighborhood or that neighborhood? Do I do it on this side of the street or that side? Like physically, where's the place
Yeah.
that I'm gonna have? In our context, it's more almost you can replace it with like platform. Am I gonna
Mm-hmm.
put it on GOG and Epic or just Steam? Am I gonna go on consoles or not? Do I bother with the app stores?
Somebody said something that I think could also be a good replacement for place is market fit. Where does it stand in the market? Does it have a place? I don't know, but
Well, I mean, but that's the entirety of market is
fair enough.
finding
That's true.
like
That's true.
so it's promotion, it's price, it's place, and the fourth P is product.
Mm-hmm.
Actually thinking about the product, who's it for, what are we building, what are the features, scope, all that kind of stuff. And so for all the game developers who think, oh, I'm just a game developer, I don't do marketing, it's like every game developer is a marketer. You are doing marketing by thinking about your game and the design of your game and what genre it is and what features it has and the scope of it and what price we're going to sell. All of that is marketing. So
Yeah.
when someone says like, what do I spend on marketing? How much should I spend on? Usually what they're asking is how much should I spend on promotion? Because marketing is so fundamental to everything you're doing. Like the moment you decide we're going to make a game,
Mm-hmm.
you are doing marketing. When I'm telling you, think about your audience and who's this for, that's marketing.
Yeah.
When you're trying to decide, is it genre, like what genre is it? What's the scope? What are like all of that is marketing. And so as an indie, what I would say for marketing is really emphasize the product, meaning the thing that you're building,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the genre,
Mm-hmm.
and do your homework on different genres. So we picked a little bit on like the 2-hour short narrative game, not going to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
We had a friend Rory who built essentially a walking simulator, looked beautiful, but it's
Mm-hmm.
a genre that's not selling.
Mm-hmm.
If you did like not even a half an hour of research, you
Mm-hmm.
would have realized like, oh crap, no walking simulator has sold since Dear Esther and Gone Home like 15 years ago or whatever, how many
Mm-hmm.
years ago that was. Okay, maybe we shouldn't do that if we actually want to make some revenue. So spend more time on that and more time on thinking about who the audience is for, and
Mm-hmm.
then building the community via the whole play testing and demo and all that kind of stuff. And it's a slow grind. It's a slow grind to
Yeah.
build that up. I wouldn't even worry about, oh man, do I spend money on ads and like don't spend a penny on ads. Like it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pick a genre that has a chance to succeed, that you're passionate about. Think about the audience. Go find them. Talk
That
to them.
that's what I was trying to say earlier, which I think I wasn't able to express myself well. But when I was saying as an indie game developer, you have to be more flexible and you can't use the same avenues as Cyberpunk 2077, which is buying ad YouTube banners, that's buying on Instagram. It's just not, you're gonna sink.
If you think your game's going to do well because you have to shout about it, like yell, hey everybody, look at my game's cool, you are going to lose that fight every time, to your point, because Cyberpunk had a 50 million marketing budget. The latest
Jesus
Assassin's Creed
Christ.
Shadow probably 100 million. Like God of like Grand Theft Auto,
50 million for their marketing budget?
yeah, I mean it's millions,
Jeez.
tens of millions, like
Yeah.
hundreds. in some cases. Like the marketing budget for Grand Theft Auto 6 is probably like 200 million or some crazy. It's some ridiculous amount of money. Like it's just going to be bonkers, absolutely bonkers.
So
So
I'm
so
gonna email
you
Rockstar for one of those.
now imagine you're an indie and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, should I spend $1,000 on ads or two? Oh, how much? It's like, stop. Like, don't even
It's not even
bother.
the same
Like,
scale. Yeah.
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 So it's they're like with a megaphone, and you got like
Yeah. Yeah.
build community, find your audience, figure out where they hang out.
So
Go
so
talk.
let me ask you this. This might be, if you don't have such a big budget, but you have a budget, would it be better to blow it as one big load, or one big, like on one streamer, for example, as opposed to diffusing it through ads and
I would take that money and hire a community manager.
interesting. Really?
Right. If the team is a programmer, an artist, a designer, whatever, and you don't have someone on the team that really knows community management, social media, all that kind of stuff, let's add 10 grand. I'd hire a part-time community manager. That's where I would spend the money.
That's, guys, you heard that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I never would have thought. I would have thought maybe one big streamer one time would be a
No.
better return. No?
No, because a really good community manager, social media person will get the game noticed, will get it in front, like, and you'll have the smaller streamers that'll pick up the game, which then that'll get noticed by the slightly larger streamer. And I mean, assuming it's a good game, right? It still
Yeah.
comes down to like picking the
As
right
long as the
genre.
product's there. If the product is there, then yeah.
Then that more, call it guerrilla or grassroots approach, is going to get you there. But you got to have someone on the team that's going to do that grind. And if you're a programmer and an artist and designer and you don't know nothing about it, and also you're busy making the game, if you got a few grand, hire a community manager, and they'll get that done. So
I think that's really useful to know. So thank you. I also wanted to ask you. Wait, I had a really nice question for you somewhere here. Where did I put it? I think it's here. Okay, this one's a little bit more controversial, but it's gonna segue into something. Given the rise of AI in game development, do you think this is gonna impact the barrier of entry for game devs? Do you think it's gonna make things a lot more accessible? Do you think it's dangerous? Do you think it's something that should be avoided at all costs? Like, what's
So let's ignore the ethical questions for the moment. Like that's that should be a whole other 1 hour session, and I'm not well equipped to really dissect all of it. So let's just sort of put a pin in the ethical side. But yes, barrier to entry. I mean, it's already gone down. I mean, remember at the beginning of the session, we were talking about the 90s where 3D engines barely existed, and people were like coding up their own rasterizers, and so the barriers to entry to make a game have fallen, I mean, really, really low. And AI will continue to do that and also accelerate the pace of development.
Yeah.
So AI will have a fundamental, big shift.
So you think it's gonna make it more accessible, even more accessible than it already is?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is already why there's 15,000 new games on Steam instead of 1,000 or a couple hundred.
That's crazy.
Back in the days, because it's and never mind the App Store. I mean, on Android and Apple, it's like 100 games a day. It's like some bonkers. So yes, meaning the ability to make a game is no longer going to be that special.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's a difference between making a game and making a masterpiece, making a great game, making a really fun, engaging game. Of course, that's still going to take some. I think it'll be a while till we have the singularity where our brains meld with the machines and all games will be in a click. But so making a game versus making a great game, there's still delta there. But the issue is already the storefronts are flooded with crap, and you have to sift through and find the good ones. But now there's going to be even more, more and more and more crap. So even if you're like, well, listen, I have the skills, I can make the great games, you still have to wrestle with the flood.
The flood, exactly.
Just the noise. So that's kind of an issue. But it also then sort of reverts back to the importance of audience, because your fans are going to be fans of you and your taste and your artistry and your special touch and the things that you and your team do. And that in many ways is what protects you and gives you some sense of sustainability over time.
Yeah.
Because if it's just, well, we're going to make games like, and it's robots making games and everyone all around the world making it, like it's not a, it's the, so building a successful studio is not about making games.
Exactly.
Building a successful studio is about making fans.
Exactly. I like that. I like that. Write
And
that down,
and
folks. That's a
and
good one.
if you have that mindset shift, is like, well, listen, oh crap, at the end of the day, actually what we're doing is we're building a fan base. And since we're game makers, the way we know how to do that best is to make some cool games to kind of, pull them in. But ultimately, to be a successful studio, a successful business, you are building a fan base.
Yeah.
And everything you do has to be about capturing fans.
It feels like that's the nature of most modern entertainment these days, even with Netflix, with influencers, with I mean, I don't know if you know video game Donkey, who started a video game studio actually, and one of his games got nominated. I forget what it was called, but basically, like you said, he started the right way. He got a whole crowd of people who loved him. He started by
Yeah.
really started the getting good marketing from the get-go, and then he was like, all I need to do now is make a good game, and he can hire experts. He can figure out, he can get that funding as well because he knows he's got the audience. He knows he has.
Exactly.
That's somebody said. Grimalkai says, "Thank you so much. This is extremely helpful, and he now understands the mistakes that he's made marketing. So this is extremely useful to him." I have one last quick question that I think I don't know if
I gotta go make dinner.
yeah, I know, and I gotta go eat dinner. So, I've noticed in the last few years there's been increasing consolidation in the industry with like major acquisitions, with like EA, Activision happening, and studio heads having less and less experience in the actual game making process. Right now, we've got MBAs. So as we head towards a more business-driven, MBA-driven industry, how do you think this impacts smaller studios and newer startups? Does it impact them at all? And basically, what do you think are the trends that indie game developers should start preparing for to adapt to this future, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. Like I don't care that they got the MBAs and all that. Like there's no soul in that.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the beautiful things for indies is that we're on the ground. We can engage with our audiences. We can interact with them. They can fall in love with us and what we're doing and sort of the vision that we have as creators, and sort of really bring that passion. So the fact that EA has some, I don't know, Procter and Gamble exec, running it, and they're thinking of it like they're moving, boxes of cereal, or
Mm-hmm.
like this is a different universe. That being said, having someone on the team that's business oriented and can think through marketing and do competitive analysis and go do the social media, all this kind of stuff. Like, so for me, when we were doing investing with Execution Labs, we always wanted to see a minimum of 3 co-founders: creative, technical, and business. I mentioned it before.
Yeah.
And if we had an amazing team came to us with no business person, they were super talented, prototype was amazing, like everything was awesome. We're like, you don't have your business person. Like, come back when you have a business person. And they were all like, wow, we're so talented. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're building a business, and you need someone that has that mindset. Now they went off and got someone who was a content creator, had a fairly big YouTube channel, knew a bunch of other content creators, was very savvy about how all influencer marketing worked. So it wasn't like some random, MBA suit running a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
They got a quote unquote business person that was a social media guru and a content creator, YouTuber, whatever themselves. And they brought them on board as their business person. And it was like match made in heaven. And that was, one of our most successful studios.
So essentially, what you're saying is just because we're indie, just because we're smaller, doesn't mean we shouldn't see it as a serious business, especially if we're trying to generate money.
Well, that goes back to the first comment, which is, why are you doing this?
Yeah, why are you doing this? Exactly.
And
Okay.
if it's for shits and giggles and hobby on the then don't worry about any of this. But if you're like, no, I want to be pro and put food on the table and build a business and this is going to be my career, well then of course you have to go get a business
you need a business person, of course. You can't have a kitchen without a chef, right? You can't have, but you also need an accountant at one point.
Yeah, exactly. So it's be honest with yourself in why are you actually doing this, and again, no right or wrong answers. But if you want to build a business, be entrepreneurial, have games that can succeed, find an audience. Then if you're an engineering person, then go find the person that's as nerdy as you, but about the marketing stuff.
Yeah.
And they're probably sitting there saying, "Oh man, I know how to market and I know how to do, but I can't code." So that's the peanut butter and chocolate kind of mixture. Don't be alone and do this. Find
peanut butter and chocolate is not the usual combination I've heard of, but that must be the Canadian twist. I've heard peanut butter and jelly, but
peanut butter and chocolate, bro.
That's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. But so I don't want to take too much of your time. I know we had an hour, and I think the most important thing that you've, other than the really like tangible, useful information you gave us, is be honest with yourself as to why you're doing this. Really, and if you want to take it seriously as a business, then take it seriously as a business and work your way backwards from your audience. Figure out who your audience is, and then make a product around there. I think that was extremely insightful.
And at the end of the day, the game always matters. Like it has to be a good game.
Yeah, it
has to be a good game. Cool.
Oh wait, sorry, I had my cursor on your face, and everybody's saying there's a black speck on your face. Sorry about that. But all right, well, hopefully, Jason, one day when my game Kumome becomes very famous, I'm gonna invite you to drinks or dinner back in Montreal. I don't know if do they still have Kazu, the Japanese restaurant on it was very near Concordia. It was super good. And there was also Poulet Bronzé. That's where I used to, near Boustance. That's where I would all the time. I would demolish that place. All right,
nice.
Thank you so much. Everybody's saying thank you very much for your time. And I really hope we get to hear more from you. Maybe in a few months, I will give you some updates about how our community is going.
Yeah, and just what I would say is, I do a lot of lectures and stuff at different conferences, whatever, and oftentimes those are recorded and put it online. So if you just plug my name into YouTube, you'll see a whole bunch of lectures on funding, pitching, marketing, whatever. And then also GDC, the Game Developers Conference, they have the GDC Vault. And so they have, a long archive of all, my and many other amazing, business, marketing, whatever lectures, community lectures. So you can go into the GDC Vault and find a bunch of stuff. And then I know we didn't really talk about pitching, and we touched on fun. We didn't really. For those who know Chris Zakowski, he has a bunch of courses. So if you go to howtomarketagame.com.
Could you just type in his name in the chat so I can put it for the community? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Well, he has an amazing website called howtomarketagame.com.
I've been there. I've actually used that website. Chris Zakowski, howtomarketagame.com. Okay, perfect.
So he's got stuff on he has a wish list and visibility masterclass. He has how to build a Steam page, and there's a pitching and funding masterclass that I did with Chris that's up there as well. And there's a bunch of other good marketing bits and pieces. And so so I would highly recommend subscribing to his newsletter.
Perfect. Any projects of yours that you recommend we keep an eye out on for the upcoming few months, or something that you want to?
No, I have too many projects.
Okay, fair enough. Don't want to make any favorites or any angry people. I understand. All right. Well, thank you very much, and hopefully our community will thank you very much as well. So have yourself a lovely dinner, man. See you, dude.
Ciao, ciao. See you.
Bye.
Awesome.